let's just take this number. This number hasn't been voted on, but let's take the 275. Let's put on the ballot that they authorize. What that does is authorize the bonds to be issued. You don't write a check for that at that point.
Yes.
They come in then every year and ask for the money. Is that correct?
Essentially, the way it will work under a rollover provision, which is what the district currently has.
Forget the rollover for a second. New bond.
Right.
Okay, new bond right here. Now, the public votes yes, 275 million, or 725 million, yeah, I wish. And you issue the bond.
Right, what would happen is that we would have to go to the school board, the debt management commission, and that process takes about 5 months, and then we go and issue those bonds. And for as long as, those revenues are available to the district, they would have the ability to bond against them as long as they can afford to issue those bonds. So yes, they would have, and again,
so it's not one bond that they're voting on, it's multiple bonds based on when they need them?
What I would term it is a funding plan, is what they are voting on. So they are voting on my understanding of what your committee will eventually have on the ballot as it goes through all of its process, is a list of a revenue or some revenues that will be authorized for the school district to use for capital projects. Those revenues will then be put in place, and then on an annual basis or every 2 years, however often the district needs to borrow against those, they will go through a process that is already in statute that will allow them to generate the bonds that they need for those projects.
Okay, so it's back to our process. The legislature, there's an authorization, there's an appropriation. But what Mr. DiLoretto is saying, why can't you do that for the revitalization and deferred maintenance on new schools?
Well, going back to that, if I understand what you're talking about, are you talking about essentially carving out some portion of the revenue that they currently receive and basically identifying that to be used at the appropriate time to pay for the renovation or revitalization?
If you identified $136 million that you need for capital revitalization, and you went to the voters and they approved the bond, as long as you spent the money and you sold the bond, you had to spend the money in 3 to 5 years. Is that
right?
Okay. But if you get the authorization, you don't sell the bond. How long does that authorization last to sell the bond?
The authorization on a rollover bond is good for 10 years. So the authorization the district currently has, as we mentioned, will expire in 2012. So anything beyond that point, the district currently does not have authorization to sell those bonds. So in November of 2012, we're out of the bond business unless voters have approved an extension of that program.
Thank you. Is 10 years the maximum?
10 years is the maximum under current statute.
So you could issue a bond in the 10th year, you'd have to use the money in 5 years. So you could have 15 years out of time.
Essentially, yes.
If you got legislative authorization to do that.
Is that what your understanding is, Mr. Johnson? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
If you got additional legislative authorizations, you could extend that 15 years?
Okay.
Sure. If in the next session we change that 10 years to 15 or 20, then yes, we would have that long before a school district would have to go back to the voters.
I think the issue why they don't want to go longer is money is authorization. Authorization is as good as the money because once the voters approve the authorization, then the school board goes through their process with their oversight committee. It's like having a credit line at the bank; they can go draw, right? But after a long period of time, it's kind of foggy sometimes what the money was for, and doesn't really get spent on what the intent was. And I think one of the things that we've talked about, we're interested in, is seeing if there's a way to carve out and make the money specific to, or exactly specific to certain things like revitalization. I hate to keep harping on the subject, but I think we need to work it out. I certainly understand a $487 or more $1 million need for new schools. That has to do with student population. What's hard to swallow is letting the schools run down. And the reason it's happened is because the money hasn't been there or hard choices have had to be made by our school board to not spend money there just because the funds are limited. There's only a certain amount. It's for everyday routine maintenance. You can run up and patch a roof leak, but you don't have the money to replace that roof. What that normally means is you keep patching it beyond the point where it should be patched, and it should be replaced. So you're throwing good money after, repairs become inefficient at a certain point when you should have replaced. So that's the whole point of it.
Can I offer an observation?
Sure, and then finish.
In response to what Mr. DiLoretto said, I have worked for every school district in this state except for Lander in the course of the almost 20 years I've been doing this. What you folks are talking about, the problem that you are looking at, is common across the state. Every school district that I work with struggles to figure out how they're going to keep up their existing facilities. So, I guess the point of that is you're not alone. This same conversation is going on in Fallon, in Minden, in Winnemucca, in White Pine. All over the state, school districts are struggling with how do we keep our existing facilities.
That doesn't make it okay.
Yeah. No, I understand that. I understand that.
Let me give you an example. We have two legislative buildings. We have one built in 1969 and one built in 2001 or whatever we built. And I will tell you, as chairman of the Legislative Commission, which oversees those facilities, we are in a constant refurbishing mode, because our stuff, the 120 days we're in session every 2 years, absolutely destroys those buildings. The amount of people we put through there on a daily basis, they have to be done. We don't wait until somebody complains that the carpet in the legislature looks like hell because they tripped on it and sued us. We stay up on it. Is it costly? Yes, it is. But we plan for it. We budget for it. That is part of our process. And if we have to give up something else, we have to do it. And it's not about making the place pretty. I mean, God, you've all been there. I mean, you compare it to other state buildings, other state legislative buildings in other states, and you'd be surprised how Spartan it is. And that's fine. I mean, that's a decision the public wants us to make, and we do. But I can tell you, it still wears out. We got a boiler that probably is not quite as old as Glenn Duncan, and it's right in the middle of the building. We don't know what to do with it because it's old and it needs to be replaced, and that space needs to be used. But that doesn't make it right for us to just say, well, heck with it, we'll spend the money somewhere else. It means we've got to set up a mechanism, and schools aren't any different. And we do the same with all state buildings until they finally, we realize we built them wrong to start with and have to tear them down. There's some in Carson City that are that way, and they're going away. So that's the issue. Just because everybody doesn't make it right. And maybe this process will help those other counties.
I think that would be greatly appreciated.
You know?